Hey everybody, it's Sydney here back with another episode of the University of Uncommon Sense. If you're new here, welcome to the channel. If you end up liking what it is that you hear, make sure you subscribe, make sure you turn on your post notifications. If this is not your first time here, welcome back. I appreciate you for continuing to support the channel. If you would like to actually support the channel, you can check out the various options I have for you to do so in the description box. For example, checking out my Patreon, where I post bonus content that has not and will not see the light of YouTube day. So everything exclusive is over there. Also, if you'd like to send something via Cash App or join my newsletter, you can do so by clicking the links down below. I wanted to come on here and talk about a case that is starting to get a lot of publicity and attention nationwide out of, I believe, the DMV area. When it comes to the unfortunate death of a young lady by the name of Dacara Thompson. This young lady was a teenager. She was 19 years old, and there was an illegal Hispanic male who was significantly older than her that has been charged in her death, as well as some people who I believe were in the home, who I believe are now being looked at as accomplices or something. And, the situation is beginning to make a lot of noise, right? There's a lot of speculation surrounding her death. People are wondering and speculating how exactly the two met, because not only was there and is there a significant age gap, but it's also a thing of, it'll be different if it was just like a regular Hispanic who had been here for some time. Maybe there was some sort of overlap, maybe they lived in the same neighborhood or something, but it's, by the looks of things, a lot of people are believing and speculating that there was some criminal activity taking place that connected the two. A lot of people feel as though the young lady could have been engaged in some sort of sex trade. Others are, confused about how that could be a possibility, given that, she did come from a two-parent household. And at the time, I think they're saying that her parents are separated, but she was living at home with her father. So for a lot of people on the surface, it just doesn't really make sense, because for those who are speculating that she was involved in some sort of sex trade or something, or prostitution, a lot of people are just not understanding how someone with both parents in their home, who come from a seemingly normal background, why that would be the case. It's just a lot of talk. And unfortunately, the reality is, when it comes to these types of crimes where someone has not survived, or, they're not in their right mind when they do, just whatever, it's always somebody else's word against the next. So, well, actually, it ain't even somebody else's word against the next. It's just, you have to take the people, the criminals left, and take their words for it, right? So it's like, will the public ever truly know what took place between these two individuals? Now, there's also some surveillance footage, I believe, of the young lady, getting out of her car. I don't remember if they said they have footage of them actually meeting up, but there's enough footage out there where the authorities feel that it was consensual, because I believe they said they saw the young lady get into the man's car, and so kidnapping is off the table. There's just a lot. Now, I want to focus on what I feel we do know, right? And I really want to focus on that, because we could sit here all day and theorize and speculate, but at the end of the day, only God know the truth, and only they who were actually there and present can actually speak for and be able to say what truly took place in that room. So to me, it don't even make sense to sit there and try to piece things together and waste time doing so. Number one, we've got to get to a place in society where we have to understand that some things are just for show. Just because there's a so-called father present, or there's two parents, or people come from middle class and whatever, at the end of the day, you never know what goes on in people's homes behind closed doors. So let's start there. I'm of the belief, I don't have children yet, so, this might be, I know this is touchy for a lot of people. I'm of the belief that your children come out according to your parenting. This is my opinion. A lot of people want to, we gave you everything. We gave our kids everything, and we did this, and y'all didn't struggle, and y'all didn't. At the end of the day, the children you get are a reflection of how you reared them. This baby boomer through Gen X generation and millennials is, as a result, these are people who take accountability for nothing. The kids at school with low literacy rates, they blaming the teachers. The kids at the mall tearing up the mall, they blaming law enforcement. Like, these are a crop of breeders, I don't even want to call them parents, who blame everything on somebody else. Daycare is too expensive. Well, let's see. I don't know about y'all, but you can't pay me. I actually really enjoy children. I do. It's unlikely though that because I actually looked into substituting. I looked into working at daycares. I used to nanny back in the day, and I enjoyed it. I was just younger, so I didn't, first of all, I had too much going on to really sit there and, I'm not about to discipline your kid. If I say no and they don't listen, then it is what it is. I shouldn't have to, it's not my job to discipline your child. That's how I looked at it as an 18-year-old. Rightfully so. That's you as a parent. It is your responsibility to raise your children to be respectful and mild-mannered. I think that other people, when it comes to the idea of it taking a village, other people are there to support that, to reinforce. But at the end of the day, it is your job to lay that foundation. So for me, that was where, nannying was just, I couldn't be sitting there yelling. I'm not finna yell at your kid. I think the older I've gotten, I still feel the same way, but I think I would be a little bit more comfortable, like, hey, no, cut it out. I'm more stern now because I'm grown. But at the end of the day, me looking into it, I've even been considered becoming a foster parent. I really do enjoy the youth. But for the lack of resources surrounding people who want to outsource their parenting to other people, thinking that you're going to pay people in these daycare centers managing 10, 15, 20, 30 kids at a time, $10 to $20 to manage all them kids. Like, child care, it's understood that it's valuable, but at the same time, people don't really want to invest in the youth. Same thing when it comes to the foster system and everything. Like, it's clear, we can see how important it is to invest into our to children, period. But people don't want to do it at the same time. It's crazy. So it's like, that's a whole other conversation. Oh, childcare is too expensive. If you think, I seen this girl say, oh, I pay $900 for my infant to be watched at a daycare a month is too much. $900? Watching and taking care of an infant and truly giving them what they need, $900 is not enough. And the reality is, I don't believe it's natural for if somebody does not truly possess a calling and a general liking to children, I personally, if I had kids, I don't trust people with kids, because people might like their kids, and that's barely. People don't even be liking their own damn kids. What make you think people want to deal with other people's kids and do it for meager wages? So what I'm saying is, a lot of these delusional parents have this idea that as long as you make sure the kid ain't starving and they got a mattress to lay on and a device in front of them and some clothes or whatever, they believe that keeping a child alive is the pinnacle of being an excellent parent. And in my opinion, that is what is truly wrong with society now, is, the silent generation, all them previous old generations, them kids was raised rough, and I don't want to take away from the conditions that kids used to live in 100 years ago. I don't want to take away from child marriages. I don't want to take away from all of the different things. But, child labor. But what I am trying to say is, while we may have advanced from some of those things, now you got all of these outside forces. Society is not what it used to be. So it's like, kids they might have had it rough, but at the end of the day, there was still dignity. There was still church. There was still, society was smaller. The population was smaller. There wasn't television programming and this music and all of this. This is how I look at it, in my opinion. So what I'm saying is this. We got to stop looking at, she had two parents and she went to private school, whatever the case is, to say, oh, well, I don't see how that could happen. It must have just been her, or she was just it. We don't know what went on in that girl's life. You know how many dads rape and molest their children? You know how many, I hate to say it, but it's not as common, but there's even cases of mothers raping and molesting their children. I'm not blaming this on them. I'm just saying, just because there are parental figures present, that's not the end all be all for measuring how well a child was reared. Obviously, there was something there that did not work. It could be a lack of oversight. Maybe you're not overseeing what your kid is doing. When I describe my parenting style, hypothetically, if I were to have children, a lot of people say I'm a helicopter mom, and oh, you got to let your kids, a lot of people have a more hands-off approach. Some people, they want to be friends with their kid. Some people financially abuse their children. If it was a situation of the young lady engaging in some sort of pay sex, what was the financial situation like? Some people said she had a job. I have to look into that. But all I can say is I came from a situation of financial abuse as a child, middle schooler, high schooler. I've personally experienced that. That is a real thing. Thankfully, I grew up in a relatively resource-rich environment. I was intelligent, critically thinking. I was able to develop high-paying skills. So, I was able to gain a footing. I also was blessed enough to have extended family members who were successful and who were generous. So thankfully, despite my home life, I was still able to branch off and do my thing. But the point that I'm making is you don't know people's situations, so we got to stop with this narrative, right? But another thing that I wanted to talk about is, social media. I'm so grateful that while I did grow up when social media was budding, I'm just grateful that I didn't grow up with it now, how it is now, and that I didn't experience the pandemic in, my middle school, high school years, because people don't want to, I don't think a lot of us have realized how much that era affected everybody, especially the children, right? Just being so deep into the cyber world. Could she have met this individual on a dating app? Could he have catfished her, right? Could it have been a situation where, these kids are having sex and perhaps he lured her in? I'm going to say one thing about the Latin community. When I was in middle school, it was Hispanic kids in my classroom who was like 15 and 16 in middle school. And the thing is, it would be a thing of either they was held back or we never really truly knew their ages and stuff because they were illegals. So, he could have lied about his age. Who knows the extent of the situation? Maybe she met him off a dating app, because a lot of y'all are doing that, where y'all meet strangers and go and immediately hook up with them. Maybe it was a situation like that. Maybe he catfished her and the age was different. Or could it have been, like I said on my old channel years ago, when I talked about how I started noticing patterns? This is prior to me becoming a entertainer. A stripper, y'all. An exotic dancer. I don't want to say stripper because, prior to me working in nightlife, and me really not knowing much about that world at all, I started to realize pattern recognition among like the divestment content in the femininity in the soft life. And this was back in 2020 and 2021. I was talking about this. A lot of people didn't like it because, I had created a lot of content about dating out of your race on my channel, right? So I attracted a lot of people who were into that. But when I started talking more so about these people online, a lot of people didn't like that because I guess what I was saying wasn't fitting the narrative, because I was speaking on my real life experiences, what it's like growing up and living in diverse settings. You naturally date people who are of different cultures unless you have just a strong conviction to date in your race or your culture, of course. But coming online, I started realizing like, oh, y'all on some different shit. As I went on, I had made a video. I was specifically talking about Shanika Adams And also, a lot of these African girls and Level Up and Soft Life. And I said, I started realizing, I'm like, no, these girls are escorts. This is before I knew anything about hoeing and, no African American policies, no black men policies among prostitutes and things like this. I didn't even know these things, but I started to realize, that this hypergamy and all this was sex work disguised as dating advice. And I made a video about it, and a lot of people said I was hating. But now fast forward, unfortunately, look at how many girls' lives have been claimed. From my opinion, it's an extension of this online propaganda. Pair that with Ashira 7. Does Ashira 7 teach certain principles that I may agree with? There are certain things that she teaches I do agree with. But at the end of the day, Ashira puts out this content as though it is the year 1990 and 2000, and the majority of women are not thinking the way that she is conditioning women to think. 20 years ago, when my mom was younger, she was on a prowl. She might have got some lames or some simps, pay her bills, and then disappeared. And that shit would have never mattered. It wasn't a big deal. A dude wasn't finna lose his mind about it. Times were different. Things were simple. Life was different. That is old game that I personally believe in. It's nothing I've ever adhered to. And it's nothing that, regardless of what I teach, I ain't teaching nothing. Regardless of what I discuss on my channel, let me get that clear, because I'm not teaching anything on my channel. It's commentary. Regardless of what I discuss on my channel, y'all never hear me say stuff like that. I'm never teaching you about take somebody money and block them and flattery and manipulation. I don't teach shit like that. What people choose to do and me gauging the situation, that's one thing. But to manipulate, finesse, all of that, I don't teach on that. I personally, and this is something I have not yet to talk about on my channel, but girls who know me, especially at work, know anybody I've had a conversation with, I don't believe in engaging male lust. I don't, and that's real shit. When I'm at work and I'm dealing with customers, I always move things into conversation. I always keep things into conversation. I'm always keeping things in the headspace, because I understand that is my strong suit. That is how I can allow someone to do what they choose to do. If somebody wants to tip me, somebody want to, I just want to take you shopping. I find you cool. You're beautiful, whatever. These things do happen regardless if people want to believe it or not. You might not be having $20,000 nights and shit like other bitches are having, because they steal and they lie and they drug people. And then sometimes maybe a girl, maybe it's just that good and she come across somebody who got it like that and it's nothing to him. Maybe she come across a 5 cokehead and he don't give a fuck. Like, those things happen. But what I'm saying is, I don't play with male lust, because I understand when you have somebody. Let me put it this way. When you choose to relate to a man on a lust basis, I'm not saying that maybe that's not initially what it drew him into you, but when you choose to maintain things at that level, that's when you simply are just an object. I'm not saying that women are objectified, period. Yes, you have little girls who did absolutely nothing and still end up victims of these treacherous and horrific crimes. You have other males who do. But what I'm saying is, there is a real way to transmute, the energy people are directing at you, and use it to charmingly and gracefully redirect that to something else, So what I'm trying to say is, while there are certain things I agree with, Shira 7, it's no reason to be out here having sex with people who aren't doing anything for you. Okay, this type of stuff I agree with. The majority of the stuff she teaches, I absolutely don't agree with. I've spoken on it before. I think it's dangerous. And so I think that is where we're seeing a lot of these crimes starting to rise. It's not like they never happened, but there is too many incidences of young black women especially, and it's not just in these interracial situations, because it's happening with black people on black people too. But I wouldn't have a shadow of a doubt if it has something to do with this content. That's the point that I wanted to make. And going back to the parents, you have to, when I say it come down to the parents, and I don't mean to say this to not have grace or compassion for them, but I think that people are way too lax when it comes to really being serious and on point about paying attention to what it is that their children are consuming and exposed to. Also, I can say, just being a child and, having, you have all your little friends, you have friends from school, then you have friends that are your parents' kids, your parents' friends' children that you're friends with. You have cousins, extended family, things like that. I can't tell you, well, I could probably tell you it's been like 3 times, but it's been several times in childhood where it could be one of my friends from school or one of my parents' kids' friends or whatever, and they're like, oh, come look at this. And what is it? It's a pile of DVDs or disgusting magazines. And them DVDs, when they used to have them pornography DVDs, the cover, that stuff was all on the cover. It's not like it was in a blank case and you open it up and put it on. No, that stuff was all over the cover. Them magazines, that stuff was out there. I can't tell you how traumatizing that shit was to come across that stuff or be exposed to that type of stuff as a child. And it did have an effect on me, and there were things that I struggled with, but I'm thankful that, nothing ever got to the point that I see other people dealing with. I have no shadow of a doubt that the lust that this generation struggles with, the sex crimes, the drug addictions, just all of these things, the mental health disorders, I am a firm believer that all of this stuff is linked to the sexual sin of previous generations. When it comes to black people, all that freaknik, white people, all that rock and roll, just all of this demonic stuff. And so what kind of, y'all know I'm going to bring everything back to spirituality. What kind of entryways and doorways did the parents have in their lives? A lot of people don't like to think this way because people don't like accountability. But at the end of the day, what is it that led that young lady to that? We would never know. We can sit here and speculate forever. But I will say this. While I did not grow up in the soft life and the femininity, and when I was on Instagram around this young lady age, we just seen girls living a certain kind of way online. We didn't know the details. Nobody would ever be thinking that, they getting flown out to Dubai and all these rumors and this stuff that we now know, escorting. We would have never really, the general public and the young girls, we didn't know all that. We thought these bitches was just rich because they had boutiques and whatever. We didn't understand maybe how they was going about getting the boutiques. We didn't realize that a lot of popping girls was ex-strippers and sugar baby. We didn't know this shit, right? So we could just live in the image and it not be a big deal. But how I was influenced is, me being in the beauty industry for so long, of course you're going to have your fair share of people who work in the sex work industry who patronize your business. But I would remember, and I might have told this story to y'all, or I didn't. When I was freshly 18, I had just moved into a new salon suite. And, my mom and I were, unfortunately, we had gotten evicted right before I graduated, just a few months before this. I was homeless at the age of 18, just had turned 18, living in my car, but I still had my little business going, right? And, my mom had decided that she was going to relocate to another state because she had a job opportunity. And so I did not want to go because I had just opened up my first salon suite and I had clientele in Atlanta. It was no reason for me. I didn't feel like it was reason for me to leave. I was just budding, And also, I was finally at the age where I didn't have to continue to be a part of the constant financial instability that we had always experienced. Like that constant cycle of moving, getting put out. Like I got tired of that shit. So I'm at an age where it's like, okay, I want to try to make it on my own because I want to be able to build something for myself. I'm building my business. I don't want to leave. So I chose to live in my car. Did I try to live with other people and try to find friends who I can move in with? Yes. Unfortunately, nobody had anything available, but my homegirls, their moms, because they were still staying at home. Certain friends were going to college that summer in August. There were nights where I got to crash on people's couches, but for the most part, I slept in my car. But I remember the day that, my mom was leaving. She was driving across the country. She took my dog with her. And before, she was telling me I needed to go buy him a crate that he could travel in. So this was, there was a PetSmart not too far away from where my salon suite was, but it wasn't like super close. There was, I was finna tell where it was, but who cares about the details? This was in Atlanta though, Metro Atlanta. But as I'm leaving the PetSmart, out of nowhere, and I'm 18, y'all, I just turned 18. Out of nowhere, this Hispanic guy comes up to me, and he was an older guy, and I was putting the crate in my trunk, and he's kind of at a distance from me, but he's like, hi, da-da-da-da, he's like speaking Spanish. And so I was like caught off guard and kind of like just like what, how can I describe this word? Just looking at him like he was crazy. Like, what the fuck are you talking to me for? Why are you speaking Spanish? I did speak Spanish. So I continued the conversation in Spanish just to see like what the fuck. So he ends up, and y'all, I look back at this time and I'm so grateful. God has just always been there for me, but I'm also grateful that times was a little bit better 10 years ago. This was literally 10 years ago. He could have, they got all these fentanyl and all this, and people saying that people spraying people and getting them perfumes. Like, I'm just grateful this was not one of those situations, because I have come to the conclusion, I am a firm believer that this is a prevalent source of this constant missing Black women and children for the last several decades. People may disagree. I believe that is what that is, and I believe it's going to continue to come to the light. And not just Black women and children, period. I'm a firm believer that this is heavily tied to a specific demographic. I know people not going to like it. I'm just keeping it real, because it just keep coming up, and I personally experience. After experiencing this situation and reflecting on it and comparing it to the information I know now, this is what affirms the speculation for me. So he comes up to me, and what he's basically telling me is, my daughter, I think he said that his daughter moved with her mom and he has a dog. He's trying to get rid of the dog. So he's pulling out his phone and he's showing me pictures of this fluffy looking dog that's black and white. medium kind of size, not small, but not super big dog. And I'm just like, yeah, no, I'm not really interested. But as he's telling me this, oh, you so beautiful. Where are you from? Blah, blah. And he's, oh, do you want to go out to dinner tonight? As he's still asking me these things, like, in between. Now, this is what's crazy. This is how the devil works. And this is how Satan sets you up. This is why I'm talking about these whole femininity cultures and stuff. I experienced this same dynamic offline, And mind y'all, I'm still a virgin at this time, I had little boyfriends and stuff in school, of course, but I was super, I don't want to say I was extremely sheltered, but I was like a mix of sheltered and popping at the same time. It was weird. So, I'm obviously very like naive, and I'm 18. So, earlier this day, I had a new client at the salon suite. Literally that same day was some girl. I don't remember her age or many details about her. I remember she was kind of a little bit of a heavyset girl. She was light skinned. And I remember she was just telling me, I don't even know why she started telling me this. Maybe some dude was paying for her hair or something. But she started telling me like, yeah, I got a man who paid my phone bill. I got a man who paid for my hair, this. And she was like, girl, you need to get out here and da-da-da. And I was just like, really? Like, this was my first time hearing this. I mean, I had seen my mama, but I never really, it just was never like a thought. You know what I'm saying? And he finna pay for my hair, blah, blah, blah. And girl, and I was like, well, do you have to have sex with all of them? And she like, girl, no. You need to find you some sugar daddies. I remember this. And I was just like, wow. A few hours later, I'm at the Home Depot and hear this man talking about we could go shopping and blah, blah. This shit crazy. Like, I cannot make this up. So I, earlier, right after I finished doing this girl hair, I don't remember how me and this girl who I used to be friends with, we had like a very toxic on and off relationship, but she had showed up at my salon suite. I can't remember why or what it was, but we ended up happening to, everything works out on perfect time, and I'm grateful for this. We ended up, for some reason, linking up, or how do you say, like, we got back on speaking terms that day. I don't know if it was because I was having a grand opening. I can't remember the details because it was so long ago. But me and her just so happened to get on a talking basis that day. And so I took his number, whatever. He was trying to get me to go to a very specific taco restaurant. And I was like, no, we can go somewhere else. Because mind y'all, at this time, like I said, I was homeless. The girl was telling me about people helping me pay bills. Like, I was in survival mode. So I'm like, okay, well, maybe he could give me some money for free, So after he leave or whatever, I take his number or he took my number or something. I just moved on with my day. But I remember calling the girl and my old homegirl at that time. And I remember telling her what happened, and I asked her if she could meet me. It used to be a gas station called the Big Easy. And, it's still there. But they have a Mexican restaurant inside that I used to go to from time to time because it used to be by my old house. So I told her about it. And I was like, well, will you meet me there and just sit in the background of the restaurant while I meet him? And she said, yeah. Shout out to her for this. So I ended up contacting the man. We met there or whatever. I got there first. She got there first. And she just sat. The little eatery was so small, but I just had her sit as far away as she could, which was only like a few tables away. And so he finally arrives and he looks and he said, do you know her? And I was like, I don't know her. Right. So he's skeptical. Y'all, this whole situation was such a red flag, but I'm telling y'all this just to show y'all how, easily this stuff could happen. And I'm just so grateful to God that in this crazy ass age, that it's only gotten crazier. I'm just grateful that of all this crazy stuff, like I'm blessed. I thank God pray over yourself, pray over your kids, pray over your families, pray, because prayer works. So he's, we're ordering ever. I remember he was so pressed to try to get me to get these lingua tacos. I'm like, hell no, I got some basic tacos. I don't even remember, right? So we sit down at the first table by the cash register, and he's talking to me. As we talking, he keep looking back, wondering, do I know the girl? And I'm like, no, I don't know her, right? But he talking about how, he's Mexican, he from California, he's a trucker, and he's immediately getting into like the sugar daddy, like, yeah, I want to take you shopping, blah, blah. And I remember asking him, like, well, where you want to go? He talking about, we can go to Target, we could go to Ross. I don't know what the hell I was thinking at this time, but I'm like, Target and Ross, what the fuck? Anyway, we finally get to a point where we are done, right? And my friend is, like we're wrapping up the eating. It was either her mom was there to get her. She was like a little bit older than me. She might have been like 19. Either her mom was there to get her, or me and him was wrapping up and I told her, something like that. But her mom had arrived, right? So she leaves the store and her mom getting gas. And then me and him leave the store. Now, this is what was so crazy about this, y'all. Like, this is how, at this point, it's dark outside. Like, it's probably like 8 p.m., 7 p.m. Like, the sun is starting to set. And, shoot, it might have been even later because it get dark late in the summer in the South. But it was like we walked in, it was light, now it was dark type thing. But her mom was at one of the gas pumps, and I happened to park my car on the side parking spaces by the exit where it was kind of dark at this point. And he recognized my car because remember he met me with my car. He pulls up right next to my car and parks his truck. So and it's so crazy because like he was backed in and I was parked normal. So even just me trying to get in my car, he could have snapped. Like, this shit crazy. So we sitting there by my car. My friend is sitting there with her mom pumping gas, whatever. And me and him is wrapping up our conversation. I'm trying to remember if he tried to get in my car and we sat and talked. I feel like that could have happened. And I feel like he kept trying to grab my head and force me to kiss him. And I'm just like, okay, it's over with. So something like that happened where we stood outside the cars and talked. But either way, I finally got him to go the fuck away. I remember trying to ask him to give me some money right then and there. Because I'm like, okay, you talking all this. And just wait. I remember him telling me too. He was like, because I told him, see, this is another thing. Kids be so damn telling everybody their business. I feel like I remember him telling him about me thinking about moving back to the West Coast or something. And I feel like he was telling me about, I'm actually taking a trucking trip to California. I cannot make this up, y'all. It's just like the things are coming back to my memory as I'm talking. He was like, you could ride with me to California, blah, blah, blah. I could take you. I remember this. And that was just the end of it. That was the end of it. And I remember calling my homegirl, like, I'm going to just say her name was Ashley. Ashley, oh my God, are you still here? Because he tried to do this, and I'm still there, right? So I get on I think I pull my car up right next to her and her mom's car, and I'm like freaking out. And I wasn't aware of my surroundings. He was still in the vicinity. He pulls up and he's like, I thought you said you didn't know her. I thought you said you didn't know her. So he watching everything. That was the last time I ever seen that man, but that was the last fucking time I'm not going to say I never, had, he said he was 45, right? So I was 18. That was the last time I sloppily did something like that. Like, now I told y'all in my latest Patreon video regarding like OnlyFans and things like that, I shared a story about y'all from when I was like 22, several years later during the pandemic, this African. It was, from that point on, like, first of all, I didn't deal with no non-blacks for real after that point. Just maybe up until I was like 20, 21. But what I'm saying is I have way more smarts. My mom had taught me way too much for me to even have let that situation be dumb. But the point that I made him go to a place I wanted to go, I made my friends stay, I had certain smarts, but that shit still, like, I would never have done nothing so goddamn dumb in my life ever since, and I'm so grateful to God. But just think about how many ways that shit could have went wrong. Like, what if when he first approached me, first of all, what if I'm in the parking lot with my back turned, putting stuff in my trunk, and he just come up and snatch me? What if, like I said, it happened to be a conversation and he doing this perfume and fentanyl and all this shit y'all saying that people just getting drugged in the public and passed out? What if it was a thing of I chose to meet him up at the restaurant he wanted to go to and it was a setup? What if it was a thing of I never bought my friend, and what if he knew the Mexicans at the restaurant? This situation could have went so fucking bad. What if I was so gullible, even more gullible and naive and dumb, that I did end up at one point wanting to move with my mom across the country, and I chose to get in his supposed truck and get trafficked to Mexico or some shit? Like, this type of stuff is happening every day in our communities. And what I really want to get at is my parents' instability. I have other stories that I can tell y'all about, but throughout my youth, in terms of me entering into adulthood youth, like 17, 18, 19, 20, and then early adulthood, like, there were several times where, I look back and people were trying to recruit me into some sort of sex work or some sort of cult, religious types of stuff. And when I think about my parents, and their faults, that type of shit is how you create room for people to come in and swindle your kids. And now, everybody's looking at this little girl like she fast and all this. You don't know what the fuck her home life was like. You don't know. Obviously, she's from a broken household. Regardless of if she had both parents or whatever, they're not together. You don't know what kind of stuff going on in people's household and their life and in her psychology. So it's really nobody's business. Her dad could have been abusing her. I've heard several situations of, girls who even, didn't grow up with their dads and they later moved in with the dads and the dads was romantically interested in them. This shit happens. Who knows, even if she was selling it, who knows what her motivations and reasonings were. So that's a reality. A lot of people don't like to look at things for the fucking facts because they don't want it to shine light on their behaviors and stuff. And I'm not, all of this is speculation and conversation. I'm not, this is all alleged. This is all just for talk. But it's really not our place to be, making such harsh judgments when we don't know what really was the case. But I think, if anything, it's a cautionary tale to young women especially. I feel so, a part of me, I feel for this young generation because when I was in high school, y'all, I'm not going to say jobs were just abundantly available, because when I was a kid trying to get a job, you really had to know somebody to get a job. Like, working at Chipotle was a popping job, but I went to school with so many Hispanics that, I do remember the Chipotle by my house with the Latin manager. Some of my Hispanic friends worked there. They only hired Hispanics. In retrospect, I remember that there was a lot of that going on, and that shit has only gotten much worse. And I grew up in Metro Atlanta, in a part of town that a lot of Hispanics were flooding. But what I'm saying is, what is it like for these kids in LA? No wonder so many of them little girls prostitutes and things like that. and their parents was crackheads and crack era and all that shit, remnants of the crack era. What about the girls in Texas? What about, y'all seen the little girl Kaya Jordan who came, I talked about this years ago when she was from Texas, and she came out talking about how in San Antonio, the Hispanics were, not hiring for many different jobs because they only hire their own. You don't know what these people are going through. Now, the little girl did have a job, but I'm talking about for others. I feel for these kids because not only have they been exposed to so much, but especially for young black kids, like, they have inherited shit. They haven't inherited shit, literally. They don't have the opportunity to just go get fucking regular jobs no more. It was difficult for us to get jobs, but it was difficult for us to get jobs because, yes, you had the whole immigration thing. You had these old ass Hispanics and people occupying jobs that teenagers are supposed to have and trying to feed their families off of. So yes, that is a reality. But also, jobs had more standards back in the day. So they didn't just hire any and everybody. That was a other thing for situations that weren't with the Hispanic thing and the immigrants and all that. It was also a thing of, they didn't want to hire kids for real because they schedules, you have a high school schedule. They needed people more flexibility. I had a good job in high school. I worked at Adidas, and I don't know. I feel like we got minimum wage or something. Like, the pay wasn't all that, but I had a bomb ass discount. And it was just like a highly esteemed job because most other people were working fast food. So that was why, or grocery. I had a very out there, I didn't have a typical job. I had a cool job compared to a lot of people. And also, I got that job because my mom's friend worked there and he helped me get the job. But I also got the job because I was a part of the work study program, and I only had 2 classes my junior and I think senior year. So I used to get out of school at like 12 o'clock or something, and then I had the rest of the day to work. So that was part of why they hired me, because I could come to work at 1 p.m. in the afternoon and leave at closing or whatever it was. I was able to work the longer hours that other high schoolers weren't. So I feel for these children because not only do you have all these immigrants who occupy these jobs, now they're kids. All these decades of kids, now they've populated like crazy. So now you got to compete with their kids. And also you have automation. A lot of jobs are disappearing since the pandemic. Also, unfortunately, a lot of these kids have not been taught how to fucking work. When I was in high school, we had classes to show the classes I was in, business class and all that, they showed us how to create resumes. We used to, I don't know if they still had this at schools, but, we used to have things where kids would work in certain parts of the school. Like, you could work in the office as a teacher's office aide. We had different programs set into place to kind of help us learn how to work. You could work concessions. Maybe they still have that. But from my understanding, a lot of these programs and things have dried up. So I feel for these children because now you have all this drug activity, you have all this prostitution, sex work, scamming. They're exposed to so much in the pressures that are on them in terms of the expectation of what an 18-year-old is supposed to be. Is crazy. When I was 18, you had you a little bucket. Hey, you still had you a car. Now you got 18-year-olds online with BBLs and Mercedes. So it's like, how easily impressionable these kids are. A lot of these kids got low self-esteem and everything else. It's just a sad situation. And so if you do have children, y'all got to be more hands-on with your kids. If you have nieces and nephews, if you have kids that you are able to influence, y'all have got to be more hands-on with your children. And like I chose to do, which I'm so glad I did, I chose to get me a trade because I've always had the blessing of foresight and prophecy, and it was already shown to me that by the time I was an adult, all that college shit was out the window. Unless you had some STEM, you was white collar, all of that. And we can see even in this day and age, white collar folks being replaced with Asians and Indians. So, I always knew I was going to have to get it out the mud. And I have been doing that since a kid. selling candy bars and shit at school. So the hustle is in me, and not just hustle, I also have business acumen because I've ran a business. So I know how to make some money, in a respectable way. I know how to manage money. I know how to manage things. So that is a blessing to me because it's a part of my psychology. Y'all are going to have to start demonstrating that to your children. Y'all are going to have to start showing your kids how to work. Y'all are going to have to start going back to, kids mowing lawns. Stop outsourcing these jobs to all these damn immigrants. Give these kids their jobs back. When my grandma and them was little, they said they used to work on them farms during the summer picking crops. Y'all going to have to get these kids back going. Y'all going to have to let these kids use your backyard to start growing some vegetables so they can sell it. Y'all are going to have to start teaching these kids how to master and hone their creativity and their natural gifts so that they are able to earn a honest living for themselves. Y'all are going to have to start creating an open door policy for your children to be able to come to you judgment free and be able to share things with you. You're going to have to let your motherfucking pride be put to the side and be honest about your faults, your downfalls and things like that, and have these transparent and honest discussions with your kids so that they know they are safe to be able to come to you. Y'all are going to have to start investing in your kids. Y'all are going to have to start getting them the mental evaluations. Y'all are going to have to start getting them off these substances. These kids are going through a lot right now. And so that is my opinion on this entire subject. RIP to this woman, RIP to the girl. I remember a few years ago, Lauren Fields or something, she met up with a white dude on Bumble. There's Sade Robinson. There's been so many cases of young black women, and not just black women, it's some white girls too. But unfortunately, I'm unable to name them because I'm not familiar with those cases, but I have seen them. We are living in total and complete warfare. Also, y'all have got to start engaging spiritually on the right side of things, getting back in church, because you are dealing with a population of people who literally worship the devil. You don't believe me? Go check out, for those of y'all who just think this shit's so fake, y'all should go and check out these. I'll try to remember the guy, Mario Espalda, I think is his name. You have a pastor, he's Mexican, American, out in Texas, and his whole ministry is dedicated primarily to evangelizing to the Latin community when it relates to their idolatry and their satanic worship of these different deities and things that their culture is predicated on. You wonder why so much of this shit is starting to spread to America is because we have large populations of people coming in doing heavy work while Americans are no longer going to church. Americans ain't praying. Americans ain't doing nothing no more. You got people coming in here putting heavy spell work against law enforcement, heavy spell work in the jobs, just so much. People don't want to have this conversation, but it's a real conversation. And in this Trump era of divine justice, people could look at it how they want to look at it. Anybody with a real spiritual eye, this is really a battle between good and evil right now. I'm not trying to say Trump is this or Trump, but I'm saying what this atmosphere is right now is we live in a time of justice. We live in a time of everything that was done in the dark is coming to the light. We live in a time of people being repaid what they have sown. That is what we live in a time of. And you want to stand up against evil, this is the time to do it. Because once this Trump era passes, I'm of a firm belief things are only going to get worse. So it's really an important time to really establish what's going on, because this is like the final battle right now of, like I said, just between good and evil. I'm gonna just leave it at that. We living in the last of the last, and that's what we're witnessing. So I'm just keeping it real. If you're smart, you're gonna get on the right side. You're gonna stop advocating for lawlessness, for people to just be able to come across these borders and do whatever the fuck they want to do. I don't care what you believe as far as whatever demographic, whatever the case is. And, you want to feel sorry for people. Whenever you get to a point where you want to start standing for injustice, you want to start standing for people's right to break laws, understand your advocacy is going to welcome law breaking and injustice in all forms. That's why the crime is going up. That's why that George Floyd shit, we keep seeing micro George Floyd situations keep replaying out on over the country. First, it was the Palestine and all that shit. Now it's the Mexicans and the illegals. You're going to keep having these insurrections and things because all of this stuff is very ritualistic in nature. I'm not going to get too much into it because people are dumb as a box of rocks and spiritually dead. But for those of y'all who do have an ear to hear and you can see things for what they are, you better start standing for something. You better start disciplining yourself and living as right as you can, doing right by people. I'm not here to judge y'all. We live in tough times. People having a tough time feeding their families. You also got people who ain't shit bothering them. Ain't nothing stopping. But what I'm saying is, I'm not here to judge y'all on how you getting it as long as it's reasonable. You know what I'm saying? You lying, stealing, taking from others, you playing a dangerous game. But if you doing something right now, if God is giving you the grace in the area that you're trying to get out of, for example, we talk a lot about, sex work on my channel. I get it, but you need to be doing what you can to do it. But you better do the best you can to get out and to do it to the most honest way that you can. All this robbing, scamming, stealing from people, dealing with married men, all this, y'all better stop that shit. Now, if somebody give you some money and I don't do that, okay, that's on him. He paid because he shouldn't have thought about sleeping with somebody else. Get your money to keep quiet. But all that doing too much, because all this shit is playing out tenfold. So that is my opinion on the subject. Y'all let me know what y'all think. You can support the channel using any of the methods down below. Also, comment. Let me know what y'all think. I know I just switched up the content on this channel, but I would love to hear y'all's opinion on things. And, prayers go out to the family of Dacara Thompson in her memory. And I pray that she be brought to justice. But another thing that I do want to say is paying attention to these guys' reactions to when these stories of women pop up. That should show you, ladies, how wicked, the wickedness that is in the hearts of these guys. Y'all need to be careful with these males that you intertwine yourself with, because a lot of them harbor a lot of hatred. So that's it.